Hi and welcome to this video. I'm going to show you how you can use flows in AttackForge to create a completely custom webhook. Flows is a new module in AttackForge which is purpose-built for automations and integrations. Before we get started, you'll find a copy of this flow on our support site so you can follow along here as well. And if you head over to the AttackForge Flows GitHub repository, you'll find an example for webhooks as well, which you can download and import into your own AttackForge. And that'll help you get up and running much faster. So let's start by looking at firstly, what is a webhook? A webhook is a way of taking data from one system and sending it to another system in real time. So for example, in here we can see when a customer is created in some system, that data may need to then go to some other server for processing. In the AttackForge world, one example might be a vulnerability just got created and that information needs to be sent to some analytics dashboard or some data lake for further processing. So let's take a look at a flow in action. So from a project in AttackForge, we're going to start creating a vulnerability. Now we're going to use write-ups to search for a write-up to make it fast and easy. Let's go ahead and select this one. So from here, we're going to go ahead and assign some affected assets and go ahead and create this vulnerability. Now, if we open up the flows module, and again, it's accessible for users who have access within the integration section, you'll see here that I have an example for a webhook, and this one's configured to run on a vulnerability created event. So let's open that one up, and we'll see that we had a run of this flow which happened just now. So if we open that up, we can see what happened. So this is a simple webhook. It only has one request, one purpose, which is to take vulnerability data from AttackForge and send it to some external system. So if we open up the HTTP tab, we'll see that we were posting data to attackforge.com and some particular API that we've specified there. We can also add custom headers. In this case, I've passed some authorization token in case this particular API needed to authenticate me. We can see the response that came back from the server. Now, obviously, this is a example, so this API doesn't exist, so we've received a 404. But what you would normally expect is probably a 200 status code to come back from the server. And it acknowledging that it received your webhook request. So in the data tab, we can see the data that we sent, and this is all the raw vulnerability created data. So we have information about the vulnerability itself. We have all of that key information, even including all the custom fields, scores, descriptions, attack scenarios, recommendations, information about the assets and affected assets. Also information about the corresponding project and any other sort of custom fields and that as well. So all this data is really valuable, and depending on what your webhook example is going to use it for, you can also selectively choose to send what type of data you might need. So you don't have to send the entire payload, you can always adjust it before you send it. Now, if we look at the logs, this is where we can see what happened as a result of this flow executing. So this is great for debugging, troubleshooting. If you need any sort of extra information with this webhook, we can have you can make that available within the logs. So let's take a look at this flow in action and see sort of behind the scenes how it's working. So we're going to open up the flow and click on edit, and we'll notice that it's configured to run on a vulnerability created event. Now, in this instance, we're saying a vulnerability got created and we need that data to go to some external system. However, the event could be a different type. And you can have as many of these custom webhooks as you need. So there's no sort of limitations there. This example is just using vulnerability data though. So when we're setting up the custom webhook, we start by defining an action, And an action in a flow is a really sort of a step that's going to happen. And in this instance, we can see the action is just to send the data to some external API out there. So there's only one action that we're going to be considering in this example. And again, in most examples, if with simple webhooks, you probably only need one action anyways. We'll notice that we're sending a post request. And again, this is probably the most common type for a webhook because we're usually taking data from the source system, in this case, AttackForge, and sending that out to some external system. So it's usually done through post requests, but again, you're not limited by that either. We could also then set the URL, and the URL is really the destination system that's going to receive this webhook data. So in this case, again, I've set a URL to some sort of fictitious endpoint, but you would adjust that to match your own needs. Similar with the headers. Now, in most cases, the content type would probably be application JSON because that's what a lot of RESTful APIs are expecting, and the data from the event from AttackForge will be in JSON format. So that's, but again, you would adjust all of the headers dependent on the system you're communicating with. Similar, if you need to send some type of authentication token, you can either write it into the headers directly using a value or a secret. We generally recommend setting a secret so that way the data remains encrypted and protected in the database as well. If you're using secrets, you can go ahead and create a new secret, assign it with a value, and then go ahead and select it here when you're setting up which secret value you want to assign to the header. So once that's been set up, let's have a look at the request script. Now, the request script in this case is pretty much just saying go and continue. And what that means is don't do anything, just send the entire payload to that webhook that we're posting the data out to. Now, if we did want to send a subset of the data, or we wanted to adjust the payload so it's in a different format, maybe some of these fields need to be renamed based on what the destination system needs. All of that logic can be done within your request script here on the left-hand side. Again, that's leveraging AF script as the scripting language. So if you've never used AF script, or if you're new to AttackForge, highly recommend to check out the video, read a little bit about it on the support site before you start building your custom webhooks. But once you're comfortable with that, you can go in and start adjusting your payload, and that way you can match the expectations for what that external system is going to require. Now, once the response comes back from that endpoint, in most cases, you're probably going to check for just a sort of a 200. Because this is a fictitious endpoint, I'm just using a 404 as well as an example. But in most cases, when those destination systems receive the data, there's usually some type of acknowledgement. It might be a message in the body of the response that says, status okay, or it could just be the HTTP status code. So again, depending on which system you're communicating with, that would be known at the time. But from here, really the purpose of this flow is now complete. If the destination server has accepted the message, then this flow can terminate. So in this case, we can return a decision to finish up this flow. In other cases, if there's an error condition, we can abort the flow. And if you wanted to add some extra logging in there, you could absolutely do that using AF script as well, just to help you with debugging and troubleshooting as well. So that's really all there is to it. You can get creative now and build as many custom webhooks that you need to send all of your AttackForge data to the right places. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.